The air in Lee Arundel State prison always carried the same heavy scent, rust from the old pipes, bleach from the nightly mopping, and something deeper, regret, thick and lingering, that no amount of cleaning could ever erase. I sat on the edge of my narrow metal bunk, the thin mattress sagging under my weight, worn smooth in places by the bodies of countless women who had come before me. My knees were drawn up to my chest, arms wrapped tightly around them as if holding myself together was the only thing keeping me from falling apart completely. With the jagged edge of a broken fingernail, filed down over months of careful, secret work, I pressed against the damp concrete wall behind the bed frame. The surface was cold, unyielding, but it gave just enough under pressure. I dragged the nail slowly, deliberately, carving a straight, uniform line into the gray stone. One more mark. The sound was faint, a soft scrape that blended into the distant clank of doors and the muffled voices of guards doing their rounds. No one noticed. No one ever did. I leaned back and counted them again, tracing each line with my eyes in the dim, fluorescent light that buzzed overhead like an angry insect. Row after row, grouped in fives for easier tallying, just like they taught us in elementary school. 1,095 marks. Exactly 3 years' worth, one for every day. I had been locked inside this place. Tomorrow would be the last one. Tomorrow the gates would open, and I would walk out into a world that had moved on without me. My name is Kezia Vance. At least that was the name I was born with. The woman who built Vance Cloud Solutions from nothing, who turned a second-hand laptop in my parents' garage into a publicly traded company worth $90 million. The woman who was supposed to be the pride of the Vance family, the eldest daughter who made good. But none of that mattered here. Inside these walls, I was just inmate 47892-019, a number, a statistic, a cautionary tale whispered among the other women about how even the rich and successful could fall. I closed my eyes, and the memories came flooding back without mercy, the way they always did in the quiet hours before lights out. It started in Cascade Heights, a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood in Southwest Atlanta, where the houses were big but not ostentatious, where everyone knew everyone else's business but pretended they didn't. My parents' house had a double garage, one side always filled with my father's classic Mustang that he polished every Sunday afternoon. The other side was mine. Once I turned 16 and started tinkering with computers. I never went to college parties. I never took those weekend trips to Martha's vineyard that my friends from Spelman and Morehouse begged me to join. While they were out living the carefree early 20s I never had, I was coding late into the night, building secure cloud, storage solutions tailored for small businesses that couldn't afford the big enterprise packages. My first paying client came when I was 25, a local accounting firm that needed better data, backup after a ransomware attack nearly wiped them out. From there it snowballed. By 33 we went public. The IPO was covered in the Atlanta Business Chronicle, the Journal-Constitution, even a small mention in Forbes. I owned the majority. Shares, some inherited through a trust my grandfather set up before he passed, but most earned through pure hustle. I signed every major contract. I flew to investor meetings in Silicon Valley and New York. I was the face of the brand. Vance Cloud Solutions wasn't just a company, it was me. But my family never saw it that way. My younger brother, Tane, 4 years younger, charismatic, impatient, grew up believing it would all be his one day. He was the son, after all, the supposed true heir to the Vance legacy. Our parents doted on him in ways they never did on me. My father, Reginald Vance, a retired banker who had made his money in real estate, always spoke as if the company was just a temporary stewardship until Tyne was ready to take over. One day, he'd say over Sunday dinner, his eyes on Tyne, "This will all be yours, son." I heard the whispers through closed doors. I saw the looks of quiet disappointment when my father watched me present quarterly earnings on the big screen in the living room. Every time a magazine called me Atlanta's Queen of Tech, he'd smile and clap politely. But the smile never reached his eyes. My mother, Evelyn, was subtler. She'd hug me and say how proud she was, but then turn to Tane and talk about how he needed to step up soon. Then came Sela. She entered Tane's life like a storm, beautiful, sharp, ambitious. They met at a networking event downtown, and within months, she was pregnant. The wedding was rushed but lavish, held at the Swan House with 300 guests. My mother was overjoyed. Finally, a grandson on the way. The bloodline secured. She called me the week before the accident, her voice bubbly with excitement. Keziah, honey, can you take Sila to her prenatal checkup for me? I'm tied up with the church auxiliary meeting. I agreed, as I always did. It was the duty of the eldest daughter in the Vance family. Quiet. Reliable, always putting family first. That day, the Georgia rain came down in sheets. The kind that turns I-85 into a slick river of brake lights and hydroplaning tires. I was driving the company Tesla, sleek and silent with Sila in the passenger seat. Her hand rested protectively on her rounded stomach as we merged into traffic. At first, the conversation was light. Baby names. Maybe Reginald after my father. Or Tane Jr. nursery colors, soft blues and grays. Then out of nowhere, Sila shifted. Thane mentioned he wanted to pull some capital from the company for a side investment. What do you think? I kept my eyes on the road, hands steady at 10 and 2. We're in the middle of a major server infrastructure expansion. Pulling funds now would tank the stock price. It would hurt every shareholder, employees with stock options, mom and dad's retirement accounts, everyone. Sila's lips curved into a small smirk. You always put the company before family, don't you? Thine is your brother. He deserves a bigger piece. The argument escalated quickly. I tried to stay calm, keep the car steady in the downpour, but she wouldn't let up. She accused me of being selfish, of clinging to power just to prove something to our parents. Her voice rose sharp and accusing. She gestured wildly, leaning toward me. In the heat of it, she lunged, suddenly, violently, and yanked hard on the steering wheel. The car veered instantly. Tires hydroplaned across the wet pavement. Metal scraped the guardrail with a deafening screech. Airbags exploded in white clouds. The windshield spiderwebbed. I slammed on the brakes, heart pounding, bringing us to a halt amid honking horns and swirling rain. I turned to her, breathless. Are you okay? Sila clutched her stomach, face pale. Blood seeped between her fingers. The ambulance came fast. At the hospital, the doctors confirmed the worst. She had lost the baby. I sat stunned in the hallway, guilt and shock twisting in my gut. But what came next turned shock into nightmare. Sila told the police I had swerved deliberately, angry over the money dispute. Tyan arrived, holding her hand, his face a mask of grief and resolve. My parents rushed in soon after. My mother hugged Sila, sobbing, then turned to me with a coldness I had never seen. My father said nothing at first, just nodded when the officers asked about long-standing family tensions. The dashboard camera footage mysteriously vanished. Later attempts to recover it showed the files had been wiped clean. No trace. No metadata, nothing. My accounts were frozen under an emergency order Tyne filed, claiming risk of asset dissipation due to my mental instability. Without funds, I couldn't hire the top-tier attorneys I knew. I got a young public defender, overworked and underprepared. The trial was a farce. 3 weeks in Fulton County Superior Court. My family took the stand, one by one. My mother, tears streaming. She's always been jealous of Tane, even as children. My father, Keziah controls the company too rigidly. She never gave Tane a real chance. Sila, in a wheelchair, bandaged. She deliberately steered toward the barrier. I felt it, Tane holding her. She grabbed the wheel in anger. I'm sure of it, I testified calmly, recounting exactly what happened. But without evidence, without resources, my words fell flat. The jury saw a successful woman suddenly unhinged. Guilty. 3 years for involuntary manslaughter. Restraining order from the company. When the gavel fell, I didn't cry. Just emptiness. Back in my cell, I opened my eyes. The memories receded, leaving only the cold concrete and the 195 marks. Tomorrow, freedom. But not forgiveness. Not yet. The lies had cost me everything. Now it was time for the truth to collect its debt. The morning of my release arrived with a thin, cold Georgia mist that clung to everything like a warning. I had barely slept. The cell block was quieter than usual. Even the women who normally shouted across the tears seemed to sense that something irreversible was about to happen. At 5:47 a.m., the lights snapped on, harsh and fluorescent, the same as every other day for the last 1,095. But today the routine felt different. Today it ended. I dressed in the clothes that had been brought for me 2 days earlier. Simple dark jeans, a gray cashmere sweater, low-heeled black boots. Nothing flashy. Nothing that screamed tech millionaire. Returning to the world. The fabric felt foreign against my skin after 3 years of stiff orange, jumpsuits and state-issued underwear. I folded the jumpsuit one last time, placed it on the bunk, and did not look back. Property release took 43 minutes. They handed me a clear plastic bag containing everything I had arrived with. A gold chain my grandfather had given me, a worn leather wallet with $27 in cash, my driver's license, expired, and the clothes I had worn the day of the accident, now cleaned and folded. No phone, no keys, no company badge, just those few items and a bus ticket voucher they offered everyone. I declined the voucher. By 8:15 a.m., I was standing in the discharge area, waiting for the final buzzer. The guard on duty, Officer Ramirez, a woman who had always been fair but never kind, gave me a small nod. "Good luck out there, Vance," she said, her voice flat. I nodded back. No speeches, no tears. Just the heavy metallic clang of the Sallyport door sliding open. The outside air hit me like a shock, crisp, damp, carrying the faint scent of pine from the woods beyond the razor wire fence. Freedom smelled different than I remembered, sharper, real. A small crowd had gathered. Beyond the chain-link gate, reporters. I had expected a few local stringers, maybe someone from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. But there were more than a dozen. Cameras with long lenses, microphones with foam covers, a drone buzzing overhead, tech journalists from the Atlanta Business Chronicle, a crew from WSB-TV, even a financial reporter who looked like he had flown in from New York overnight. They started shouting questions the moment I stepped into view. "Miss Vance, do you have a statement about your conviction? Are you planning to return to Vance Cloud Solutions? What is your relationship with your family now?" I kept my face neutral, eyes forward, walking at a steady pace along the gravel path toward the gate. And then I saw them. My parents stood at the front of the crowd, dressed for the cameras. My mother wore a camel coat and held a bouquet of white roses, her face arranged in hopeful relief. My father stood beside her in a navy overcoat, hands clasped in front of him, the picture of dignified reconciliation. Behind them, Tyne and Sela. Tyne in a tailored gray suit, Sela in a burgundy dress that hid any lingering evidence of what had happened. They all smiled. The same practiced smile, the one reserved for shareholders and charity galas. My mother stepped forward as the gate slid open, arms outstretched. "Honey," she called, voice trembling just enough for the microphones to catch it. "We're so glad you're home. We've missed you so much." The cameras clicked furiously. This was the money shot they had all come for. The tearful family reunion after years of tragedy. I did not slow down. I walked straight past her without breaking stride, without turning my head, without acknowledging the extended roses. I felt the air shift as her arms dropped. I heard the sharp intake of breath from the reporters as they realized this was not the script anyone had expected. A sleek black Bentley Continental slid silently to the curb just beyond the crowd, hazard lights blinking once. The rear door opened from the inside. A man stepped out, tall, mid-30s, dark hair neatly cut, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's yearly salary. Sterling Blackwood, Harvard Law, known in Atlanta legal circles as the man who dismantled corporate fraud cases, the way surgeons removed tumors precisely, completely, and without ever losing. He had rejected Tyne's attempts to hire him 3 separate times over the last 2 years. I knew this because Tyne had bragged about it once. In a visiting room conversation I had ended after 30 seconds. "Miss Vance," Sterling said, loud enough for the nearest microphones to pick up clearly. "Your car is waiting." I slid into the back seat. The interior was cool, quiet, smelling of new leather and subtle cologne. The door closed with a heavy, airtight thud that cut off the barrage of questions mid-shout. Through the deeply tinted windows, I watched the scene shift in slow motion. The reporters turned from my family to the Bentley, shouting new questions. "Who's the attorney? Is this a lawsuit? What does this mean for Vance Cloud stock?" My mother's arms hung at her sides now, roses drooping. My father's jaw worked silently, the way it did when he was calculating losses. Thane stared at the Bentley's license plate as if committing it to memory. Silas' face had gone very still. Sterling settled into the driver's seat. He had insisted on driving himself today, and pulled away from the curb with smooth acceleration. "The penthouse is ready," he said without looking back. "The team is waiting." I leaned against the headrest, watching the prison recede in the side mirror. "Take the long way," I said quietly. I want to see the city again. He nodded and turned, onto a side road that wound through the pine. Forests south of the facility. For 20 minutes we drove in silence, the radio off, the only sound the faint hum of tires on wet pavement. Atlanta unfolded slowly. First the industrial outskirts, then the sprawling suburbs, then the skyline rising in the distance, glass towers catching the weak morning sun. I watched billboards flash by. One of them featured Vance Cloud Solutions' latest ad campaign, the one Tyne had launched 6 months ago. A smiling, diverse team under the tagline, "Secure Tomorrow." Today, my face was nowhere in it. Thanes was front and center. We crossed the Chattahoochee River, then merged onto I-75 northbound. Traffic was light for a weekday. Sterling took the 14th Street exit and wound through Midtown, past Piedmont Park, past the Fox Theater, past the new developments that had sprung up while I was gone. The city had grown, changed, moved on. I had not. The Bentley pulled into the underground. Garage of a sleek, new residential tower on Juniper Street. Sterling parked in a reserved spot marked PH1. A private elevator required a key card, which he used without speaking. The ride to the top floor took less than 30 seconds. The doors opened directly into the penthouse. It was exactly as I had imagined it in the long nights in my cell. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the park and the skyline beyond. Pale oak floors, minimalist furniture in grays and whites. The air smelled clean, lemon polish and fresh linens, nothing like the bleach and despair I had breathed for 3 years. I left the plastic prison bag on the marble kitchen island and walked straight to the master bathroom. The shower had 6 rain heads and a handheld. I turned every dial to maximum heat and stood under the water for what felt like hours, scrubbing with cedar-scented soap until my skin was pink and raw. The steam filled the glass enclosure, washing away the institutional smell that had lived in my hair and pores. I watched the gray-tinged water swirl down the drain and wondered, not for the first time, if rage could be scrubbed away as easily. When I finally stepped out, wrapped in a thick white robe, Sterling and a woman I recognized immediately were waiting in the living room. Odessa Rhodes, 61, silver hair pulled into a severe bun, eyes like polished obsidian. Former federal prosecutor turned corporate litigator. She had sent more white-collar criminals to prison than most U.S. attorneys. They sat at a mahogany table already set with documents, 2 open MacBooks, and a French press steaming with coffee. "Welcome home, Miss Vance," Odessa said, standing. Her voice was firm, professional, no trace of pity. "We have much to discuss." I poured myself coffee into a real ceramic mug, thick, dark, scalding, and sat across from them. It burned my tongue in the best possible way. Sterling slid the first folder toward me. "Revocation of the emergency power of attorney your brother filed, citing mental incompetence. We're challenging it on grounds of fraud, coercion, and lack of medical evidence. Your signature here reactivates your majority shareholder status immediately." I took the Mont Blanc pen he offered. The weight felt strange, too smooth, too expensive after years of cheap prison Bic pens. I signed without hesitation. Kezia A. Vance. Odessa placed the second document in front of me. "Emergency motion for forensic audit and temporary asset freeze. Filed in Superior Court this afternoon. Prevents any further transfer or expenditure of company funds until the audit concludes." I signed again. Sterling's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, frowned slightly. "National Bank is resisting, citing the existing freeze Tyne put in place. They want 24 hours to review conflicting orders." Odessa's eyes narrowed. "They'll have 4. File the ex parte motion now. Judge Harrison owes me from the Meridian case." Sterling was already typing. While he worked, Odessa reached into her briefcase and withdrew a small black USB drive. No label, just a handwritten M in blue ink on one side. "This is the backup," she said quietly. "The original dashcam footage was wiped from a server in Buckhead 17 months ago. Our forensic team spent 2 years reconstructing fragments from external backups, deleted email chains, and cloud shadows. It's all here, internal communications, offshore transfers, shell companies in the Caymans. Enough to prove systematic embezzlement." I took the drive. It weighed almost nothing, 8 grams of plastic and silicon, holding 3 years of betrayal. Sterling ended his call. "Motion filed. Hearing in 2 hours. Bank will comply or face contempt." I plugged the USB into the secure laptop they had provided. Files opened in organized folders, spreadsheets with dates and amounts, email threads between Thane and anonymous accounts, invoices for services that never existed. Millions siphoned slowly, carefully, over years. It wasn't impulse. It was a plan. Long before the accident. Long before the lies. My new phone, issued by Sterling in the car, buzzed incessantly on the table. Notifications, tags, news alerts. I ignored them. Across the city, at the Georgia World Congress Center, the National Tech Summit was in full swing. 800 attendees in the main hall, thousands more watching the live stream. Thane was midway through his keynote, wearing a navy suit, standing beneath a massive screen displaying projected revenue growth I had never authorized. He announced a new partnership with Pacific Data Systems, a $50 million deal that would have been the largest in company history. The audience applauded as he invited their CEO on stage for the ceremonial signing. Thane handed the company's titanium black card, unlimited limit, to the waiter delivering champagne. The portable terminal beeped once, declined. He laughed it off as a glitch, tried again. Second beep, declined. The third attempt drew murmurs from the front row. His phone vibrated. He stepped aside, still smiling for the cameras, and answered. Mr. Vance, this is compliance at National Bank. All corporate accounts have been frozen by court order, effective immediately. No transactions authorized until further notice. The color drained from his face under the bright stage lights. The Pacific Data CEO paused mid-handshake, suspicion clear. Someone in the audience began recording. Within minutes, your Vance Cloud crisis trended nationwide. Back in the penthouse, I closed the laptop. The coffee had gone cold. Odessa gathered her papers. The freeze extends to all personal accounts linked to company funds. Cards, lines of credit, everything. I nodded. For the first time in 3 years, I felt the faintest thread of control returning to my hands. Sterling stood. We'll monitor fallout. If needed, we go public tomorrow. I walked to the window. The city lights were beginning to flicker on in the distance. My city, my company, my life. Piece by piece, it was coming back. The USB drive sat on the table like a small black bomb, waiting for the perfect moment to detonate. The morning after my release, Atlanta woke to a city humming with gossip. Phones buzzed across breakfast tables in Buckhead mansions and midtown lofts alike. The video of me walking past my mother's outstretched arms, the white roses drooping untouched, had already racked up 2 million views on local news, sites, and X. The clip of the Bentley, pulling away while my family stood frozen in front of the prison gates was everywhere. Vance family drama trended nationally by 9 a.m. In the penthouse, I ignored all of it. I stood at the kitchen island in soft gray loungewear, drinking my second cup of coffee, watching the city move far below. The skyline glittered under a rare, clear December sky. Sterling had left at dawn to file additional motions. Odessa was due back at noon with updates from the forensic team. For the first time in years, I had nothing scheduled, no count to attend, no head count at 5 p.m., no lights out at 10. The silence felt vast and unfamiliar. My new phone vibrated again, 23. Missed calls from my mother's number alone. I finally opened the messages. The first few were pleading. Honey, please call me. We need to talk. I'm so sorry you're still angry. We only did what we thought was best for the family. Your father isn't feeling well. The stress is too much for him. The later ones grew sharper. You embarrassed us in front of the entire city. Think about the company stock. It dropped 8% yesterday. This isn't just about you, Kezia. I set the phone face down and walked to the window. The stock drop didn't surprise me. Investors hate uncertainty. And right now, Vance Cloud Solutions was drowning in it. Across town, in the Buckhead mansion, my brother and Sela had moved into 2 years. Ago paid for partly, with diverted company funds. Thane Vance woke to chaos. His phone had been vibrating nonstop since 5 a.m., 47 missed calls. The first text from his executive assistant was blunt. Call immediately. Medical records leaked. He opened the link she sent. A scanned document from Grady Memorial Hospital, dated 3 weeks before the accident. Diagnosis: spontaneous miscarriage due to prolonged work stress and hypertension. No mention of vehicular trauma. No mention of me. Sila's signature at the bottom, acknowledging receipt of the information and discharge instructions. Thane's stomach dropped. He scrolled further. The file had been submitted anonymously, as part of the emergency audit motion, filed the day before. then picked up overnight by every major Atlanta outlet and Bloomberg. Headlines screamed across his screen: Vance Cloud Solutions. CEO's wife lost pregnancy before alleged car accident. Doubts cast on founder Keziah Vance's wrongful conviction. Medical records raise questions about family testimony in manslaughter trial. He threw off the covers and stormed down the floating staircase to the kitchen. Sela was at the island, calmly pouring coffee into a porcelain mug, wearing a silk robe the color of champagne. "Is this true?" he demanded, shoving the phone toward her. She glanced at the screen, then set her mug down with deliberate care. "Yes." The single word hung in the air like a guillotine. "You lost the baby weeks before the accident." "Yes. And you let all of us, testify that Keziah caused it." Sela met his eyes without flinching. "You wanted her gone. The company was slipping out of your grasp. Board members were starting to ask why the founder was still calling all the shots while the heir sat in a corner office, doing busy work. I saw an opportunity." "An opportunity?" His voice cracked on the last syllable. "You sent my sister to prison for 3 years over a lie." "Our lie," she corrected coolly. "You believed it because you wanted to believe it. You needed her out of the way to take control. I simply provided the story you were desperate for." Tyne paced the marble floor, hands raking through his hair. "The board is calling an emergency session today. Investors are pulling term sheets. The Pacific data deal is dead." Sela sipped her coffee. "Then fix it. Deny everything. Say the records are forged. They're from Grady, your doctor. Your signature." She shrugged. "People make mistakes. Records get misfiled. You're the CEO. Act like one." He stopped in front of her, seeing her clearly for the first time in years. The calculation behind the beauty, the ambition that matched his own, but colder. "How could you look me in the eye every day knowing this?" "Why did you never ask?" She replied simply. "You were too busy celebrating your new title. You didn't want the truth. You wanted the win." The silence stretched until a news helicopter thumped overhead, hovering above the neighborhood. Teen's phone rang again, his father's name flashing. He ignored it. "You're not the victim here," he said quietly. "Neither are you," Sela countered. "We both wanted the same thing. I just made it happen." He stared at her for a long moment, then turned away. "Get out. Pack your bags. I want you gone by tonight." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "With what money? Your accounts are frozen, remember? Cards declined. Lines of credit suspended. I checked this morning." He had no answer. By 11 a.m., I was dressed in a tailored black blazer and slacks, hair pulled into a sleek low ponytail. Odessa had advised keeping the press conference short. Factual, no visible emotion. We held it in the executive conference room at Vance Cloud Solutions, headquarters downtown, a room I had designed myself, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the connector and a long glass table that reflected the city lights at night. A small press pool waited. 3 TV cameras, reporters from the AJC, Business Chronicle, Bloomberg, and Channel 2 Action News. Flashes popped as I stepped to the podium. "Thank you for coming on short notice," I began, voice steady. "As majority shareholder and founder of Vance Cloud Solutions, I am announcing an independent forensic audit of all company finances, effective immediately. The audit will be conducted by an outside firm with full cooperation of law enforcement if required." Questions erupted instantly. "Miss Vance, what about the leaked medical records? Do they change your view of the accident? Is this audit targeting your brother's management? Are criminal charges being considered?" I raised a hand. "Certain documents have come to light that raise serious questions about the events leading to my conviction. The truth will emerge through proper legal channels. Until then, I am reassuming my role as chairperson to protect the company and the thousands of employees who depend on it." A reporter from Bloomberg pressed, "Do you believe your family deliberately framed you?" I looked straight into the nearest camera. The evidence will speak for itself. Justice always finds its way into the light. 8 minutes total. No follow-ups. Odessa escorted the press out. Afterward, Sterling handed me fresh printouts. Social mentions were exploding. The stock had dipped another 4% at open, but began climbing within minutes of my statement. Investors responding to clarity, to the sense that someone competent was back in charge. "The board wants an emergency vote on leadership transition," he said. "Let them have it," I replied. "We'll be ready." That afternoon, the eviction notice was served. The Buckhead estate, 6 bedrooms, infinity pool, home theater, 3 acres of manicured grounds had been titled solely in my name since before my parents moved in 20 years ago. A premarital asset from my grandfather's trust, never commingled. The court recognized it without dispute. I arrived in a black Escalade with Sterling beside me and a court officer in the front passenger seat. 2 moving trucks idled at the curb. Reporters and neighbors had already gathered behind the wrought iron gates. My family waited on the front portico, suitcases at their feet. My mother clutched a small jewelry box, eyes red-rimmed. My father held one garment bag, posture rigid. Thane's face was haggard, unshaven. Silas stared at the ground. The court officer read the order aloud. Immediate vacation of premises. Personal clothing and toiletries only. All furniture, artwork, appliances purchased with company funds must remain. My mother broke first. She dropped the jewelry box and hurried toward me, arms open. "Baby, please. This is our home. Think of your father's health." She slipped into our childhood Creole, the soft, musical language of lullabies and bedtime stories. "Oh, chérie, pas fait ça. Pas fait non ça." My father's hands trembled at his sides, but he didn't speak. Tane stepped forward. "Kazia, think about what you're doing. This will be all over the news. The stock." "It's already all over the news," I said quietly. Then Amari arrived. My youngest brother, 25, sharp gray suit, close-cropped hair, parked his Audi at the curb and walked up the driveway slowly. To outsiders, he looked like the concerned mediator, the good son trying to calm things down. He placed a gentle hand on our mother's shoulder. "She's angry right now. Give her space." Then softer to me, "Little sis, maybe cool off a bit. They're still our parents." His eyes held mine a second longer than necessary, steady, knowing. Tyne turned to him desperately. "Amari, talk to her. You're the only one she might listen to." Amari regarded him with an unreadable expression. "You made your choices," he said simply, then turned away. Scylla finally spoke, voice laced with venom. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" I didn't answer. Neighbors filmed from behind the gates. A news van from Fox 5 arrived, camera rolling. The movers began carrying out marked items. The Basquiat print bought on a company card. The Sub-Zero refrigerator installed as part of an executive wellness kitchen. The Peloton bikes listed under employee fitness incentives. My mother collapsed onto the stone steps, sobbing into her hands. My father tried to help her up, but his legs seemed unsteady. Tane remained on his knees until Sterling politely suggested he stand. 30 minutes later, they stood outside the gates with 3 suitcases and 2 duffels. The only items they could prove were purchased with personal funds. The gates closed electronically behind them. Video spread like wildfire. Vance family evicted. Tech founders' revenge. By nightfall, the footage was on every local station and trending nationally. I watched from the foyer as the trucks pulled away. The house felt cavernous, echoes loud in the sudden emptiness. Amari lingered last. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly, once the others were gone. I nodded once. He squeezed my arm, the only physical contact we'd had in years, then walked to his car. The sun sank behind the Georgia pines, painting the sky gold and crimson. Inside, the movers finished. I stood alone in the marble entry. The faint trace of my mother's Chanel No. 5 still lingering in the air. For the first time, I wondered if revenge tasted like victory, or just another kind of hollow. The boardroom at Vance Cloud Solutions, headquarters, had always been my favorite space in the building. I designed it myself during the 2018 renovation. A long, oval glass table that caught and reflected the Atlanta skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows, pale wood paneling, ergonomic chairs in charcoal leather. It was meant to feel open, collaborative, forward-thinking. On this afternoon, 3 weeks after my release, it felt like a courtroom. 12 board members were present. 8 in person, 4 on video screens mounted along the far wall. Directors from San Francisco, London, Boston, and Dubai. The air smelled faintly of coffee and tension. No one spoke as I took my seat at the head of the table. The chair that had been empty for 3 years. Odessa Rhodes stood to my right, a projector remote in her hand. Sterling Blackwood sat to my left, a thick legal pad in front of him. I opened the emergency meeting with a single sentence. "We are here today to address the financial and leadership irregularities uncovered in the preliminary forensic audit." Odessa clicked the remote. The first slide appeared, a timeline stretching back 4 years. Red arrows marking suspicious transactions, transfers to offshore accounts. payments to shell consulting firms, invoices for services that internal records showed never occurred. The room shifted uncomfortably. A few directors exchanged glances. The conference room door opened quietly. Amari Vance walked in carrying a thick accordion folder, his face calm but resolute. At 25, he looked older than his years in a tailored graphite suit. Hair cut close, eyes steady. He had been invited only as an observer. His shares from our mother's trust gave him that right, but no one had expected him to speak. With the board's permission, he said evenly, I would like to present additional evidence. A beat of silence. The chair of the Compensation Committee, Dr. Elena Chen, nodded slowly. Proceed. Amari placed the folder on the table with a soft thud that seemed louder than it should have. He began laying out documents in neat rows. Printed emails time-stamped over 3 years. Bank statements highlighting transfers. Invoices signed in Tane's distinctive looping handwriting. Wire confirmations to accounts in the Cayman Islands linked to shell companies. Payments to a private investigator who had tailed me for months before the accident. Small bribes to a dashcam recovery technician, funneled through gift cards and Venmo to avoid paper trails. I started compiling this the day Kezia fired me as CFO, Amari said quietly. Those minor reporting discrepancies everyone dismissed weren't random. They were the first breadcrumbs of systematic embezzlement. He paused, letting the words settle. I pretended to stay neutral with the family to maintain access. Sunday dinners, holidays, board updates. I documented everything I could without raising suspicion. Every conversation, every offhand comment about reallocating resources or streamlining inheritance. He looked directly at me for the first time. That day in the prison visiting room, when you refused to sign over the shares, I chose her side. I just needed time to prove why. The room erupted. A venture capital partner from California demanded chain of custody verification. Odessa stepped forward, confirming that every document had been forensically imaged with immutable timestamps. The private investigator had already rolled in exchange for immunity. The technician had provided sworn affidavits. I let the questions fly for 10 minutes, then raised a hand. Motion on the table, immediate removal of Tane. Vance from all executive positions. Referral of findings to federal authorities for criminal investigation. An appointment of interim leadership pending full audit completion. Hands rose one by one, unanimous. Tyne was not present. He had been asked to stay away during the investigation, but his removal was official by 4:17 p.m. The fallout came fast. Within 48 hours, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Georgia opened a formal investigation. Wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit perjury, securities fraud. Subpoenas flew. Devices were seized. Offshore accounts frozen. My parents were the first to crack. They took a plea deal, 18 months each for perjury and conspiracy to commit fraud, reduced to time served plus probation in exchange for full cooperation. They avoided additional prison, but forfeited all voting rights in the family trust forever. Sila testified against Tyne in exchange for probation and 500 hours of community service. Her role in fabricating the accident narrative earned her 5 years supervised release and a permanent felony record. She moved out of the Buckhead house. The day after the plea was announced, no one knew where she went. Tyne fought. His defense team, high-priced. Aggressive, argued. It was all overly aggressive but legal business strategy. Creative accounting. Family disagreement taken too far. They painted him as the ambitious younger brother trying to modernize a stagnant company. The jury didn't buy it. The federal trial lasted 6 weeks in the Richard B. Russell Federal Building downtown. I attended every day, sitting in the front row of the public gallery in simple dark suits. Hair always pulled back, expression neutral. Reporters filled the overflow room. Prosecutors laid it out methodically, greed disguised as family loyalty. Years of slow siphoning. The fabricated accident as the final move to seize control. The erased dashcam footage. The coordinated lies on the stand. Witness after witness took the stand. The forensic accountant who reconstructed the money trail. The private investigator who admitted tailing me. The bank compliance officer who flagged unusual transfers too late. My parents testified under immunity. My mother cried silently through most of it, clutching tissues. My father stared straight ahead, face carved from stone. Sela took the stand in a conservative navy dress, voice steady as she recounted the argument in the car. Her grab for the wheel, the prior miscarriage she had hidden. She did not look at Tyne once. When Thane testified, he was polished, tailored suit, calm demeanor, practiced remorse. He admitted to accounting irregularities, but denied orchestrating the accident or perjury. He claimed Scylla had acted alone in exaggerating the cause of the miscarriage. The jury deliberated for 3 days, guilty on all counts. Sentencing came on a cold February morning. The courtroom was packed, reporters, employees, curious Atlantans who had followed the saga for months. The judge recited the charges: wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit perjury in the wrongful conviction of Keziah Vance, securities violations, 10 years in federal prison, no parole eligibility for 7, plus full restitution, $12 million traced directly to his schemes. Tyne stood as the verdict was read, face pale but composed. When the bailiff approached with cuffs, he finally turned toward the gallery. His eyes found mine across the room. His mouth formed my name, Kezia, but no sound came. I held his gaze without blinking. Confusion, anger, pleading, regret, it was all there in his face. And in mine, 3 years stolen, a reputation dragged through mud, a family shattered beyond repair. The bailiffs led him away last. The heavy doors closed with finality. Outside, a light Georgia rain had started, soft and steady, washing the streets clean. Reporters waited under umbrellas, shouting questions as I emerged with Odessa. "Miss Vance, do you have a statement on the sentence? Will you pursue civil damages? Any message for your brother?" Odessa guided me toward the waiting car. I paused on the courthouse steps just long enough to speak. "No comment today." The verdict speaks for itself. I slipped into the back seat. Odessa joined me. In the quiet of the car, she asked softly, "Do you want to make a personal statement later?" "No," I said. "The truth has had its turn. That's enough." We drove in silence through downtown, past the gold-domed Capitol, past Centennial Olympic Park, where tourists took photos despite the rain. A whirlwind of emotions churned inside me, relief that it was over. A strange mourning for the family that no longer existed, and beneath it all, a steely determination to rebuild on ground that could never again be shaken by lies. The rain intensified as we crossed the connector, windshield wipers beating a steady rhythm. I watched the city blur past and felt, for the first time in 4 years, something close to peace. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but closure. The lies had finally paid their debt, and I was free to decide what came next. A year had passed since the sentencing. Atlanta had moved on to new scandals, new startups, new headlines. Vance Cloud Solutions thrived under Amari's leadership. Revenue up 28%. A major government contract secured, stock price steady. The company name stayed the same, but the culture had shifted. Transparent, merit-based. No whispers of family favoritism in the hallways. I no longer ran day-to-day operations. I consulted when needed, strategic direction, key partnerships, but mostly I had stepped back. I sold the Buckhead estate and bought a quieter home in Virginia Highland, a restored 1920s, craftsman with a wide front porch, hardwood floors, and a small garden I was learning to tend. Something mine, untainted by old money or old lies. The doctors had been gentle but honest. The chronic stress of prison, the poor nutrition, the constant low-grade trauma, it had taken a permanent toll. Fertility treatments were unlikely to succeed. I mourned the children I would never carry, quietly, in the way one mourns possibilities that were stolen before they ever fully formed. But mourning passed. Life narrowed to what was real, what was possible. On a crisp spring morning, I drove north to the Federal Correctional Institution in Atlanta. Medium security, red brick buildings behind chain link and razor wire. I had not planned to come. The request came from Thane himself, through the prison liaison. One visit, no obligation. I almost declined, but something, curiosity perhaps, or the need to close the final door, made me sign the visitation form. The visiting room smelled of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. Rows of small tables bolted to the floor, plexiglass partitions in some booths, open tables in others. Families murmured around me, wives with toddlers on their laps, mothers clutching photos of grandchildren. Tyne was already seated when they brought me in. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on a frame that had lost 20 pounds. His hair was cropped short, gray threading the temples earlier than it should have. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. The heavy watch he used to favor was gone. Inmates weren't allowed jewelry. He stood briefly as I approached, then sat when the guard nodded permission. We picked up receivers on opposite sides of the scratched plexiglass. He spoke first, voice raspy from disuse or emotion. I couldn't tell. "Thanks for coming. I didn't think you would." I said nothing, waiting. He searched my face through the glass. "I know I'm sorry doesn't fix anything, but I've had time, too much time, to think. Every day, Mom and Dad, they write every week. They ask about you in every letter. They want to know if you're okay." I kept my expression neutral. He leaned closer. "The company's doing well. I read the quarterly reports in the prison library. Amari's killing it as CEO." I nodded once. He swallowed hard. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say it to your face." Finally I spoke, voice low and even. "There is no forgiveness. Not for you. Not for Mom or Dad. The blood bond is broken. Legally, emotionally, completely. I changed my name on all documents months ago. Vance is Amari's now. You are strangers to me." His face crumpled, but he didn't look away. I continued. "I transferred full ownership and voting control of Vance Cloud Solutions to Amari. He's the only one who chose right over easy. Ethics over family pressure. He earned it." Tane's knuckles whitened on the receiver. "I deserve this." "Yes," I said. "You do." Silence stretched between us, broken only by the murmur of other visits and the occasional cough echoing off. Concrete walls. When the guard signaled time was almost up, Tyne pressed his palm flat against the glass. I did not mirror the gesture. I hung up the receiver, stood, and walked away without looking back. Outside, the Georgia air was warm and fragrant with early dogwood blossoms. I paused on the sidewalk, breathing deeply. The weight I had carried for 4 years shifted, not gone, but lighter, manageable. Some losses are permanent. 3 stolen years. A youth that would never return. The possibility of children carried in my own body. Trust in the people who raised me, shattered beyond any hope of repair. But refusing to forgive is not weakness. It is protection. It is choosing to guard what remains of myself instead of handing it over to be broken again. Greed destroys families from the inside. It starts small. Resentment overshares. Whispers about inheritance. Quiet disappointment that a daughter succeeded where a son felt entitled. Then it grows until people justify anything to get what they believe they're owed. True loyalty isn't automatic with DNA. It's chosen every day. Amari proved that. He risked everything, family approval, comfort, safety, to stand for what was right when it cost him the most. He never asked for thanks. He just did it because it was right. I drove west toward the city, the Atlanta skyline rising against a pale blue sky. The connector was busy but moving. I took the Freedom Parkway exit, wound through Inman Park, past rainbow-painted crosswalks and sidewalk cafes already, filling with brunch crowds. My new life was smaller, quieter. A boutique consultancy focused on women-led tech startups. Board seats on 2 nonprofits. A book deal I was slowly writing, part memoir, part cautionary tale about family businesses and succession. Gardening on weekends. Yoga on Tuesdays. Dinner with friends who had never once asked about the trial. Some nights I still woke from dreams of damp concrete walls and clanging doors. Some mornings I caught myself checking for marks on an imaginary calendar. Trauma doesn't vanish. It just learns to sit quietly in the corner. But survival, true survival, means deciding who gets to stay in your life and who doesn't. And living with that decision without apology. I parked in front of the Craftsman, climbed the porch steps, and unlocked the door. Inside, sunlight streamed through stained glass transoms, painting colors across the hardwood floor. On the kitchen counter sat a small potted orchid Amari had sent last week. No note. Just the plant. I watered it carefully, then stepped onto the back deck. The garden was coming alive, hostas unfurling, hydrangeas budding. A single rosebush I had planted in memory of the child that was never meant to be. Some wounds never fully heal. Some debts are paid in full, but the interest lingers. And yet here I was, alive, free, building something new on ground I had cleared myself. The afternoon light slanted golden through the trees. I sat on the porch swing, coffee in hand, and watched the neighborhood move gently around me. A couple walking their dog, children on bicycles, an old man watering his lawn. This was enough. Not perfect, not painless, but mine, and no one would ever take it from me again.